I'm in a Ziploc freezer bag, airtight package. Like a glad rapper, the nigga's a fresh rapper. Ropes full of carrots if you let us spit cabbage. Get it, lettuce and cabbage, I'm the grocery store manager. Master plan, man, check my hands as I do this. Arms folded in my stance, and you know you can't do it. Mike's the Fresh Prince, and I'm Jazzy as Jeff is. I got a quick press, I can bake with the mix.
The Cool Kids, a rap duo featuring Sir Michael Rocks and Chuck English, active since 2005. I want to salute PWE for this request because, like a lot of hip-hop fans, I've totally forgotten about one of my favorite up-and-coming groups of the famous MySpace era. The Cool Kids in those days were like the Chief Keefs and Lil Durks of their time, for lack of better comparison, and where their influence sometimes go under the radar of who they were in those days and how many rappers came behind them that ate up the notoriety and accolades they were supposed to. Their story is like stepping into a time machine in an era where not even YouTube was as popular as this group. Imagine that. MySpace, for those who don't know, was one of the first popular social media platforms where all the cool kids, so to speak, congregated to share updates about their lives. It was created and released for public use in 2003 and at its peak acquired 250 million users in the United States alone. It was Facebook before Facebook, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, and every other tool rappers use today to build a fan base. I still remember that one weirdo that was my first follower that seemed to have followed everyone else I knew. Turns out that guy was none other than creator and owner Tom Anderson, a guy many musicians owe a decent nod to for the outlet he gave them that birthed so many careers. One career MySpace played an intricate role building is with the rap group The Cool Kids. They were a Midwest-based group before the likes of Big Sean, Travis Scott, Tyler the Creator, and just about all the popular new era cool kids that didn't miss their window into stardom. Sadly, the first doesn't always mean the best, most popular, most successful, or even that they won't be surpassed and pretty much forgotten over time. But in an era where everyone was snap dancing, locked into everything 50 Cent was doing, Lil Wayne's surge into rap god position, and the groundwork being laid for the 2010s where Drake came in and took over the throne, again Chief Keef ushered in drill music and aggressive op rap, the Cool Kids were like a breath of fresh air for hip-hop fans of the 80s and 90s, infused with clever new age lyricism for the stylish, non-gang-tied, snapback and fitted cap wearing young people wanting something young and fresh to move forward. Chuck English was the engine behind the group, servicing as their producer and rapper that connected the bridge between classic hip-hop of yesteryear and new age creativity to make synth and bassy beats he and Mikey rapped flawlessly on. Together, they were supposed to have been the new rendition of the hip-hop duo, and by now, revered for pioneering much of the sound for the social media birth youth to follow. It's been almost 20 years since they met each other and began creating music, and in 2022, it feels like they fell short of what was supposed to have been musically, and the history they were set to create for these 3 reasons. Let's talk about it. What happened to the Cool Kids? Salute to PWE for this request. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music. Let's get it, man.
Yo, I can't be an average rapper, I was born backwards. Come from the womb, not from the tomb. Dawn of the dead, got these niggas nodding their head. And you know I stay in the mall more than down to the dead. But I ain't window shopping. Fresh goods and produce, those dudes, they get it poppin'. Your girl, I can pop it, you quit blocking. She shaking like a loose tooth, tell her to stop it. But I ain't tryna holler at her friend because her friend ain't looking too feminine. She got more hair than me growing out her chin. All white shirt and size 12 Timberlands, oh no. I'm from the go, but I can't go. And then I gotta run like ropes and shell toes.
Y'all ready to keep this thing moving?
The Cool Kids, born Evan Ingersoll, aka Chuck English, Mount Clemens, Michigan, and Anton Reed, aka Sir Michael Rocks, Madison, Illinois, met as mentioned on MySpace over a beat Rocks found on the site produced by Chuck English. The two scheduled a meeting to discuss the sale of the beat, but instead learned they shared an immediate chemistry and love for the same music. Classic golden era hip hop. The next 2 hours weren't spent talking about prices or leasing possibilities, but recording music together in what was unbeknownst to them, the beginning of the rest of their lives being mentioned together as far as music. They met American DJ and music producer DJ Diplo at a music showcase they performed at for the first time and agreed to release their collection of music they already had together through his label, eventually being released under a different label, Cake Recordings, in 2007 called Totally Flossed Out. They created an almost immediate buzz after their Rhapsody TV commercial in 2007 and announced the release of their debut album scheduled for 2008. But the year came and went without the album as promised. This was the beginning of them making promises for whatever reasons they could not keep. Stunt number 1, Trial and a Lot of Error. The first and most important growth stunt for the Cool Kids was one that happens a lot with anyone or thing that is one of the first of its kind. With no real example in front of them as far as new age rappers using the tools of the era, that being the internet, which is the biggest tool used with rap amateurs today to get on, English and Rocks made a lot of unnecessary moves that held so many of their following moves back, and it eventually caused them to be caught, passed, and left behind by groups and solo artists to follow. It's like they were laying the blueprint for this new way for artists to have their music heard and eventually garner enough public interest to be signed, and because they fumbled the ball so often, following rappers took the sauce and ran with it as the Cool Kids just stood in place as far as their popularity. One of the first instances of this was signing a one-of single deal with DJ A-Track, but eventually feeling he was too busy touring with Kanye West that their music wasn't being focused on enough. As a result, timelines were constantly missed as the years began to fly by. They then signed to another indie label, Chocolate Industries, in 2007 and promised their debut album in 2008. This was great timing because their buzz was rising fast. Even Rolling Stone featured them as part of their 10 artists to watch in 2008. For whatever reason, Chocolate Industries couldn't find a release date for the group, and their debut album wouldn't release until 2011 under a new label. I still remember their song Black Mags blowing up and thinking this duo had next in hip hop, but over the course of their careers, so much trial and error as far as label deals they were accepting falling through one too many times. Enough for them to lose all the buzz they had beyond underground hip hop fans. Stunt number 2, Solo Time. Another hindrance for the Cool Kids and a direct result of stunt number 1 was them basically being forced into releasing music as solo artists and not under the name Cool Kids because of label legal issues. I always say whenever artists resort to going solo too soon, it's never a good sign for the group. All it takes is one to have major success or both to have success and either neglect their group efforts or simply not have time to get together and work on group projects. Because their hands were tied, that's exactly what happened. Way before they could establish themselves as a group, they were already branching out on their own and seeing enough success that it took years for them to come together again. In 2011, their debut album released to favorable reviews, but it wasn't the success that made them household names or even reject the idea of going solo. The album trended on Twitter and received production from the Neptunes, Travis Barker, and Chuck English himself. It landed at 76 on the US Billboard charts, which was not the success expected. That year, Mikey Rocks would sign to Currency's label Jet Life and began working on mixtapes and dropped a solo album as well that also didn't move the needle as much on a mainstream level. Chuck English also began his solo endeavors that yielded 3 tapes from 2014 to 2016. Although they were servicing their fans with much music on a solo tip, the Cool Kids as a group were beginning to be a thing of the past. Stunt number 3 missed their window. Never coming back. This was a Twitter post in 2015 by Mikey Rocks that suggested the group had ran its course and never to return as we knew them. Not sure the reason for him posting this, except likely being frustrated with all the missed opportunities the group was having up to that point and someone out there not letting him live his life. English, who released a solo debut a year earlier, announced in 2016 that the group had in fact gotten back together and promised another album. This time, the album did release in 2017 and again received favorable reviews on the underground scale, but also again failed to move the Cool Kids name forward mainstream. 2020 and 2022, 2 more albums, but it was clear, for a decade by then, this group had simply missed their window to blow up. Over the years, they've worked with numerous artists that were influenced by their sound that went on to have much more mainstream success. But all hasn't been bad for the Cool Kids. They've had life-lasting success with their music, solo and as a group, being featured in places like NBA 2K, MLB 2K, Entourage, Nike commercials with LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, and much more. It's no doubt they've had music success, but as far as the expectations of future greatness for some of the coolest pioneers, that window, for reasons much out of their control, closed before they could jump through. All in all, the Cool Kids were a refreshing memory to revisit and definitely one group of the 2000s worth making note of again. They released another album earlier this year called Before Ish Got Weird for any past fans looking to take a trip down memory lane. Kids no longer, but still the same clever wordsmiths they entered the game as when their future looked as bright as any. Unfortunately, for these reasons, their growth was stunted. Salute, much respect, it's your boy JC Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.